Somewhere Better by I_am_Ellie on AO3. Episode 38. Chapter 2. Doesn't Want You to Know. Izuku had been taking medication for his nightmares since October, and it had, for the most part, been entirely effective. Izuku hadn't been moody, exactly, before, but Shouta and Hizashi had definitely seen a major improvement in the boy's attitude after he started getting a full night's sleep. He'd become less sensitive and prone to crying, and he'd had more rambunctious energy than ever, and his teary frowns were few and far in between now. So, when he and Hizashi had woken up to screaming from Izuku's room after he had a night terror, Shouta couldn't help but mourn the loss. Shouta and Hizashi had held the boy while he cried, helped him change out of his sweat-stained pajamas, and had stripped his bed down to the mattress because the sheets had been just as drenched as the boy's pajamas had been. They let him sleep in their bed for that night, nestled between the two of them, Hizashi with a hand tossed across the boy's waist, so that, if he started panicking in the night again, he would wake up immediately, and Shouta with Izuku practically attached to the side while he slept. The doctor had warned them about this. The medication wasn't a permanent fix. There was always the chance that it wouldn't work, and that the nightmares would come flooding back in. There was always that chance, and Shouta couldn't help but feel foolish thinking that a medication would work forever. They hadn't had the funds to send the child to a therapist months ago, but they did have the money now. Enough money for Izuku to go to a child psychologist at least once a week, and still pay for the bills and groceries. They should have looked into it as soon as they've gotten their new jobs. Shouta should have looked into it. Izuku had been acting strangely ever since he'd gotten lost outside of the supply store weeks ago. 2 weeks after what Hizashi and Nemuri would like to call the incident. Though there were quite a few things that Hizashi and Nemuri called the incident. He cried and wailed in his room for hours on end, seemingly unprovoked. The only thing between him and his uncles, a locked door that Shouta had considered kicking in. He hadn't told them what was wrong, and it didn't feel right to press him. But he'd been even more subdued and sad for the days outwards, and now he was having night terrors again. It made Shouta think that maybe he should have pressed. It was an early release day at UA High School because of the teaching staff meeting. So Aizawa, after hurriedly finishing his work, drove to Izuku's school and signed him out, driving him to the therapist he had scheduled a meeting with beforehand. Izuku hadn't seemed particularly worried about the therapist when Shouta came to pick him up, merely leaning his head against the seat and staring out the car window. And that concerned Shouta more than anything, because Izuku was always talking, always moving, a small ball of endless, boundless energy that never seemed to cease. He was always saying something, muttering about heroes, or singing along to the radio, or just talking to Shouta. Or some days, just at Shouta. And if he wasn't talking, he was humming. His hands were always fidgeting in his lap, his legs were always bouncing up and down, his head tilting from side to side, always looking around and staring at everything like he hadn't seen it 100 times before. But Izuku wasn't doing any of those things, because Izuku was still, quiet, unnaturally quiet, and still, staring out the car window. At the moment, not looking happy or sad, which seemed to be the boy's default emotions, or scared, or nervous, or even angry. He was just sitting there, staring at the window, face tired and blank. And that was so unlike Izuku, so unlike any 5-year-old boy Shouta had ever met, that it made anxiety thrum up in his chest. What was wrong? What was he missing? He was a hero. He was an underground hero. It was his job's description to notice things, to notice patterns, to see the tiniest details that could make or break a case, and to make a plan. Shouta lived with Izuku. He saw him every day, and it had been weeks, and he still had no idea what was wrong. Ankisho was taking Izuku to a therapist. Izuku wasn't sure what a therapist was, but Ankisho said it was some type of doctor. Izuku didn't like doctors much, but the more nervous he was, the worse it would be, so he tried not to think about the inevitable poking and prodding yet. Or maybe it wasn't a checkup at all. Maybe Ankisho was taking him here so they could get a new medication. The medication he took every night was supposed to stop his nightmares, and it wasn't doing that. Sho and Sashi had been really sad when they saw him having a nightmare, and Izuku didn't want them to be sad, too, because then there'll be 3 sad people in one house, and that was never fun. And Izuku hated it when his uncles were sad. His unkies weren't sad a lot, at least not in front of Izuku. They got mad and scared and worried, but not sad. And it had never been like that kind of sad his mommy had been, when she got all tired and slumped over and glassy-eyed and defeated. Never. But when he had his nightmares again, after months of not having them, they did look that way. Just a little bit, and it was scary. That was another reason Izuku was going to the doctor instead of being nervous. He had made his unkie sad, and if the doctor could fix his nightmares, they wouldn't look like that again. So it didn't matter if it was scary or not. He'd go anyways. They pulled into a parking lot in front of a building Izuku had never seen before. It wasn't his usual doctor's office, that was for sure. This was a whole new area. Sho helped him out of his car seat and held his hand as they walked into the doctor's office, signing some paperwork at the reception desk, before sitting down on a stiff-backed plastic chair. Sho stared at the clock, and Izuku stared at his shoes, kicking them back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. They got boring, so he grabbed Sho's hand again, playing with the golden ring on his finger. It was shiny, and it glinted off the light. Izuku thought he liked the ring just a little bit more than the ring Sashi wore. It was warmer. Sho was tapping his foot restlessly, and Izuku thought he might have done the same thing had his feet been able to touch the floor. As it was, the bottom of his feet were half a foot above the ground. He'd have to be careful when he slid down from the chair, or he would fall and hurt himself. Izuku Midoriya? The nice lady called at the reception desk. Sho stood up, and Izuku carefully slid out of his chair to follow him. When the receptionist smiled down at him kindly, Izuku felt his ears turn red, and he hid behind Sho's leg. Room 108, the receptionist said, and Sho nodded, grabbing Izuku's hand and guiding him down a slide door. The doctor's office was weird. It wasn't like any other doctor's office Izuku has ever been in. There was green carpeting on the floor rather than the cold tiles, and the wall was covered in TV show posters and family pictures. There was a tub of toys in the corner, and several children books on the bottom shelf of a bookshelf. On the topmost shelves were thicker books, obviously meant for someone older than Izuku, and Izuku could barely understand some of the words. It was difficult because of the font and the angle. A set of Harry Potter books in Japanese, Little Woman, and several books in languages that Izuku didn't quite recognize, but they had very pretty covers. One had a dragon printed on this right spine. Izuku thought that Denki would have loved to look through those books. There was a little table on the side of the room with a Scrabble game on it, pieces strewn about, and on the rug was a book with messy scribbled kanji printed along the dot lines, like Izuku had at the beginning of the year, when he was still learning to write and read. Suddenly a hurried young woman with black hair cut short into a bob and brown eyes walked in, looking a bit frazzled. She had smudged eyeliner on her eyes, but no other makeup, and she was wearing black skinny jeans and a forest green t-shirt, along with a jean vest. Sorry. The woman scrambled, running together the mess on the table and the floor and put it away. I was working with one of my patients on the monitor skills and... She gestured to the writing books. Well, her mother was in a hurry to leave, so we didn't really get anything to put up. She finished wearily. Izuku Midoriya, right? The woman asked, glancing down at Izuku. Izuku was standing close to Sho, one hand holding on to the hem of his shirt tightly. Izuku nodded. She talked funny. Her words were slightly tilted, sort of like Denki's were, except she sounded different. Lovely. I'd assumed you're his guardian, Shouta Aizawa. Sho nodded. Izuku forgot that Sho's name wasn't actually Sho sometimes. Awesome. My name is Yuna. I'm your doctor for now, Izuku. She smiled down at him, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, and Izuku smiled back. Would you like to sit down or maybe play with some toys? Izuku felt his gaze shift back to the plastic tub of toys. I'll open up the box for you. Mr. Aizawa, would you like to sit? Sho nodded stiffly, sitting down on a much more comfortable-looking plastic chair in front of Miss Yuna's desk. Izuku felt nervous for just a second before Miss Yuna dragged the big box out and started sorting through the toys. I have action figures, some balls, blocks, dolls, stuff like that. Izuku kneeled by the box, immediately grabbing a superhero action figure. It was an action figure of the hero Eggshot, and Izuku sorted through the box until he found another hero, Gainorka. Gainorka was scary, really scary, but he was a teacher at UA, just like Unki Sashi and Aunt Nemuri, and they always had nice things to say about him whenever they talked about him. Miss Yuna sat behind the big desk, giving Unki Sho her full attention, and Izuku listened into their conversation while still playing with the toys. He made towers and buildings of blocks, and one of the rubber balls was a meteor, crashing towards the city. And then there was Eggshot and Gainorka there to save the day. Boom! Pow! Kapow! Izuku shouted, making Gainorka's action figure kick the asteroid away from the buildings. One of the building blocks got knocked off the top, but Izuku thought that was okay. There was always property damage when heroes worked, and it was horrible, but that was just how it was. The heroes always helped clean up afterwards anyways. The good ones, at least. I'm on a time crunch. I am literally... I have to leave in, like, less than an hour, right? We're probably gonna have to start heading out. In fact, we're probably gonna have to start putting everything away and doing all of that by 1:30. Or not 1:30, but by 2. It's 1:21. I have 30 minutes to record the next one, which I should be able to finish in 30 minutes. Upload it and do all of that, but I don't know if I'm gonna have 30 minutes because sometimes a video that's 10 minutes long can take me 20 minutes and sometimes it can make me 30. And that's if they let me sit here and record. So hopefully I will be able to record the second, episode 37. If I don't, you guys will still be getting it probably at the time that it's supposed to be, so tomorrow, because I should be returning the day this video uploads. Should. Keyword, should. If I do not return by Monday, I swear to God, Monday, the cat tree arrives, and I need to be here to set that up, okay? I need to be here to set that up, so I cannot be gone Monday, all right? I also have other things that I need to do Monday because other stuff also arrived Monday, except, so I can't, no, look, I have to be here on Monday, so whatever. Point taken is, this is a very interesting, we see Izuku with a therapist, woo woo. This is again, it's very interesting to see how child therapists talk with children. I've never seen a child therapist with, like, talking to children, and I'm gonna have to take notes and stuff like that. I've sat in one of the meetings for my brother, during therapy. Obviously his therapy is gonna be a lot different than, Fluffy Mind therapy, specifically with Izuku and Fluffy Mind, so, but I'm taking notes. I'm taking notes. I_am_Ellie. I'm taking notes right now because I desperately need notes, considering that both Izuku's lost a parent, except one is a little more harsher and the other's not. So, anyways, as always, my raindrops, make sure to eat, sleep, drink water, take your meds. Have a wonderful day or night. Link to my Discord server and socials are down in the description. Subscribe to see more of my content, and thank you so much for watching.